Good afternoon, Haiti Oropesa with Florida U Judge, and I have my very good colleague, Donnie Kilfin, attorney Donnie Kilfin. He's joining today, and he's going to actually guest host this afternoon's broadcast. He is going to be chatting with, she's waiting in the waiting area, Judge Liz Jack, who has been serving the Pinellas County on the circuit bench for 5.5 years now. She's running for re-election because she wants to continue to serve. So Donnie's going to be chatting with her. I am going to go off to the background to work the equipment behind the scenes. But, anyways, let me bring her on. Hi.
Hi, Haiti. Thank you for this opportunity.
Of course. And so I'm going to turn it over to.
Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon, folks. Again, I am attorney Donnie Kilfin, owner of the Kilfin Law Firm PC. I am delighted to once again be hosting or guest hosting Florida U Judge this afternoon. Today, I will be interviewing my friend, colleague, and circuit court judge in and for Pinellas and Pasco counties, Elizabeth Jack, who is running for re-election this coming August. I will say out of the gate, in the interest of full disclosure, that I wholeheartedly support Liz Jack in her upcoming campaign. And I'm saying that in my own personal capacity versus on behalf of the platform itself. So with that disclosure having been made, Liz, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Great to see you, Donnie, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity in Haiti to let voters know a little bit about me. Obviously, I've known you many, many years. We worked in the same division as prosecutors, tried cases together, know each other personally and professionally. So it's very cool to have you interviewing me. And, you know I've known Haiti for many years as well in her work as a criminal defense attorney.
Yes, I think we all go back just about 25 years or maybe even a little bit longer than that. I hate to say it, but alas, it is true. Yes. So with that being said, I just wanted to start off by asking you a little bit about your background so that our viewers can get a better sense of you as a person. Can you tell us where you grew up and where you attended college?
Sure. So I grew up in Massachusetts, north of Boston, in a town on the water, and about 20 miles north. And I ended up going to Boston College for my undergraduate. So New England was my home, that whole area. And I ended up after college, I worked in publishing. I lived in San Francisco and Chicago and worked in that field, computer publishing. I was interested in English, communications, publishing, news production, and I thought that's the path my career would take.
Did you attend college in Massachusetts then?
I did. I went to Boston College.
Nice. And what year did you graduate?
Oh, Donnie, you're a cruel man. 91. It was a long time ago. I think we just had our 35th reunion this spring. And I didn't go, but I got a lot of fun pictures. I was campaigning.
Okay, yes, which has kept you a very busy lady, no doubt. So where did you ultimately go to law school?
I went to the University of Chicago and graduated from there in 98. So I had this period of time where I was working in the publishing field and I knew like I wanted to continue my education, but didn't really know what area. So I did a book that I checked out of the library called What Color is Your Parachute? All these personality and interest questions. And it said lawyer, but law school is a big proposition. And I didn't know lawyers. I had never been exposed to that world. So I found a job as a paralegal for a sole practitioner in Chicago. And he really instilled a love of the law. He liked to explain as he went. I was his right-hand person. I'd go to depositions. He eventually had me prepping depositions, handling discovery. And as a result of that, I realized I absolutely love this. And I still feel that way. I encourage people who are interested in the law to pursue that. It's a career that grows with you. There are so many different ways you can apply it. Even if you don't practice law, it enhances anything you do. It expands how you think. And then if you have a passion like medicine or sports or whatever it is, animals, you can become an expert in something in the legal field that involves that passion, the environment. And so I went to law school thinking, well, I've been involved in computer publishing world, and I'm really interested. I remember the internet had just come out. Like my job, I used DOS and dial-up. And
I remember that.
I thought intellectual property in the internet, who owns this and how is this going to grow, would be where I'd practice. And I took my first criminal law course and I fell in love with it. I had always loved reading true crime books in my spare time, and I never really understood there's different levels of intent. Like there's a lot of nuance to criminal law. And so my first criminal law course showed me that, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so I took every criminal law course I could. University of Chicago is not known for criminal law. So I took the courses I could. I did internships at the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Cook County State Attorney's Office, the Office of Legal Counsel in Washington, D.C., which advises the White House and is part of the Department of Justice, to get exposed to as much criminal law as I could while I was in law school. And I've always found it very interesting.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I do recall hearing a quote from a movie one time that through the law, you can touch anything. And it's true. The law touches absolutely every facet of society in some way or another. And it's plainly obvious to me that your passion for the law that you describe as a younger person has never waned. That's been very evident to me over the years in your capacity as a prosecutor when I used to work with you, in my capacity as a defense attorney when I had cases opposite you, and certainly now as you serve the public in the way that you do as a circuit court judge. So we are all very, very fortunate to have you having served in those capacities over your very lengthy and distinguished career.
Oh, thank you, Donnie. That means a lot to me.
Did you, what was your first job as an attorney after you graduated law school? And I think you touched on that you may have worked as a clerk at some point in time.
I was a federal law clerk in Tampa. My first 2 years, federal clerkships are usually 2 years, and I served 1 year with a magistrate judge in Tampa, Elizabeth Jenkins. And then I worked for a year for Judge Susan Bucklew, a longtime district court judge that everyone in the area knows, both of them, very well-respected judges. And it was such a valuable addition to my skill set to, in federal court, most of the motion practice is done on paper. And so it involves a lot of research and writing. In state court, more minimalistic motions are filed, and then there is typically legal argument. Oral argument, in-person argument. So it's a little bit different. And the federal court experience, I touched on everything. We had many civil cases, many criminal cases. The district court handles appeals from the magistrate for things like Social Security, disability benefits, many federal issues. So it kind of had an appellate flavor too. So all of that was very valuable to me, to knowing I could pick up any issue, research it, and help the judge form her opinion and help write that opinion. Those judges absolutely were in control, but they relied on their law clerks to help prepare the issues and present them to help the judge reach the best decision. And in addition to getting that legal knowledge, it really helped me understand what goes on in chambers. How do judges think? What's important to them? What's not important to them? And I brought that, I feel, throughout my career, and I believe that helped me as well.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine how invaluable that experience would be right out of the gate, to be practicing for somebody like Judge Bucklew and getting that range of experience where you're dealing with not only criminal law, which I think was a good part of your career thereafter, but also being exposed to civil issues as well, and understanding the components of that, because there's a lot of differences there. And certainly having been able to spend that kind of time with a judge like that would inform you, I think, very, very well for when you ultimately became a judge yourself.
And they're both wonderful people and were mentors to me. So it was just an incredible experience to have out of the gate as a recent law graduate. It was so valuable. I try to be as accessible as I can to law students at Stetson. They like to do internships and they can get credit for that. So I try to take on as many interns as I can. I realize it may not provide as much experience as a full-time federal clerkship, but just while they're taking courses to be exposed to a judge, how a judge thinks, seeing a little bit behind the scenes, watching hearings, I think can help shape their career. And so I try to do that as frequently as possible.
Yeah, 100%. That's very good that you do that, Liz. So, and that you said was about 2 years that you served in that capacity after you had graduated from law school?
Yes. And then I was interested in I was interested in prosecuting, whether it was federal or state. And I began working at the the state attorney's office in Hillsborough under Harry Lee Coe. And then Harry Lee Coe passed and Mark Ober was appointed, and then he was elected. And so I worked for Mark, who's now a big supporter and wonderful mentor. And I moved to Pinellas County and I began working for the Sixth Circuit under Bernie McCabe. That experience was also valuable because, as you know, as a defense attorney, the two circuits have different flavors. And in Tampa, in Hillsborough, there are intake attorneys who would investigate the case and prepare the charge and then pass it off to an attorney in court. In Pinellas County, in Pasco, the Sixth Circuit, we investigated our own cases and made our own filing decisions, and then we owned the case. So we were held more to the initial filing decision because we were expected to fully know the case at the time we made the filing decision.
Yes.
In Hillsborough, there were the intake attorneys, they were responsible for that, but then the attorney who inherited it might learn more about the case or speak with more witnesses, and the case may change. So both very respectable ways to do it, but different ways to do it. And I really enjoyed the way that we did it in the Sixth.
Yes, and it was ultimately after your transition over here to the Sixth Circuit that I became acquainted with you. You and I worked together in the same felony division for a couple of years at the very least. And I do recall very succinctly back in that time frame, which would have been the early 2000s, having trials with you and having cases with you. And I remember very well just the level of preparation that you would put into those cases. It was actually kind of blew me away just to see, how dedicated you were to that. And I was always of the view that you were a very skilled and very capable trial lawyer. And also thereafter, in my capacity as a defense attorney, when you and I would have cases opposite each other, it would be the same thing. I mean, you had some very difficult and complicated financial cases, and I would, again, see the same thing, just the level of preparation that you would put into those cases and the way you handled yourself in court. And I think more importantly, just how fair you were in your dealings, not only with me, but with other defense attorneys that had cases opposite you as well. That was just one thing that, everybody was of the view of, is just how fair you were in your dealings with people. And at least to me, that is probably the most important quality of a judge. And there's just been a handful of people over the years where I've thought to myself, okay, that person would make an excellent circuit court judge, because that kind of fundamental fairness is something that you can't teach. I don't think. I think that it's innate in you, or it isn't. And it's something that you've always possessed, which is why when you initially ran back in 2021, I think I did not hesitate for a second to be on your campaign committee, because I knew how well served the citizens of this county would be with you on the bench. And that's why I'm supporting you. And on your campaign committee here once again, because I know how important it is to have people like you on the bench.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Donnie. I was just thinking of those initial meetings. They were pre-COVID. They were
Yes.
the year prior to COVID, 2019, and then the beginning of 2020. And we would meet in person. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of how much the world has changed since then, where we do so much by Zoom now. And then we were having in-person meetings.
I just can't believe how long ago that actually was. It's just like the blink of an eye, but you're right. I think that was 2019, 2020.
And I remember it was a good mix of all kinds of attorneys. And like you say, on both sides, something your listeners may or may not know, like when you get a case, you are an advocate for your client, you as a private attorney, me on behalf, at that time, on behalf of the state, which as I viewed it was, what does the law say and what is the just result? And so it was wonderful to pick up the phone when a new attorney came on a case. You just pick up the phone, you have a conversation, you're two human beings discussing the case, getting on the same page, being open about, well, this is where we are and these are the issues I see, being open about what the weaknesses of the case are too, to help try and resolve it in a just way. And some of the financial cases, as well as other special prosecutions, homicides, cold cases, things like that, prosecutors handle both cases post-arrest that were made by law enforcement, and then the prosecutor's going to be involved in speaking to witnesses, maybe helping obtain more evidence. But there are also pre-arrest investigations that may or may not ever be filed. And it's helping work with law enforcement to for legal opinion of the case, more is needed, or what are the problems with the case, etc. So it's a very interesting job.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you did that for a number of years here in Pinellas County. But I think there was also a time where you had got a degree in another field and had done some other work in another field during that time frame. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that and what that experience entailed?
Yes, I didn't complete a degree. I started going down that path thinking that I would. I started studying psychology at USF, and it led to a position in the psychology department at USF St. Petersburg, mainly with the Family Study Center under Dr. James McHale, who's brilliant. And he does a lot of interventions in South St. Pete with families of young children, new parents who are not staying together, but he's a co-parenting, an internationally known co-parenting expert. So I was studying psychology and taking master's level courses, undergraduate courses in psychology, but also master's level, understanding behavioral science, how to do research, what research is credible, how to read published opinions and studies, and what are the weaknesses of them, understanding the scientific method. And the Family Study Center, in addition to doing co-parenting interventions, we offered an infant family mental health certificate program. It was a 4-semester certificate, and it was an add-on to people who worked with infants and families in the social services field to better understand co-parenting, infant brain development, and it really enhanced my understanding of the effect of conflict on a child's developing brain, which prenatal to age 3, 95% of the brain is wired. And as a family law judge, when I see a family in conflict with any children, the effect of stress is terrible, but especially young children. They basically don't have a subconscious. They're relying on their parents for all of that. And if their parents are under stress, or in danger or anything, they're going to feel that. So one of the programs or projects that we had was applying for a grant for an intervention program called Baby Court that was a national program. They had 7 different locations at the time. And we applied for the grant, we won it. And I worked with Judge Lynn Tepper in Dade City to bring Baby Court there and help selected families where a parent's trauma was what was triggering them to abuse or neglect their child, and helping them work through that trauma. And that has now grown into early childhood court. And so it's like a diversion program for parents in dependency, where there's the promise of hope for change because they've suffered trauma. So that was a wonderful experience too. And while I was studying, I took the USF has a conflict institute, and I did the parenting coordination course, the mediation course, and I could see that maybe I would develop my career more in the field of psychology and or family law. But I ended up going back to prosecuting in the Sixth Circuit and was selected to serve on the Judicial Nominating Commission, which interviews and nominates attorneys for open seats. And then the governor appoints judges for open seats. So as you know, there are 2 ways a person can initially become a judge. They can be elected to a seat, either by running against a sitting judge or running for an open seat. I ran for an open seat when Judge Covert retired, right at the end of his term. And then the other way is when judges retire or leave mid-term, the governor has a commission per circuit that interviews attorneys who apply, and then those attorneys are nominated and the governor selects the next judge. Once a judge is on the bench, every 6 years they come up for re-election. And so I was serving on the JNC, and I realized I loved my career as a prosecutor, hadn't really thought about the next step, but that process made me realize I really do hold the standard of law above all else. And I want judges who do that, who have the courage, the conviction to do that, who are going to rule based on the law, regardless of their personal beliefs. And I think I've reached a point in my experience level and my skill set and my values where I believe that would be a way that I could serve in a higher calling. And so I ran and I won. And I do feel like all of my life experiences, my experience as an attorney has put me in the place where I can best serve. And I do hope to continue serving in this role for as long as possible.
Is a circuit court judge everything you thought it would be? Do you enjoy what you do?
Trying to remember, how did I think it was going to be? In terms of how I feel about it, I just feel like one of the guys. And I always held circuit judges in such esteem. I really respect and love our judges here in the Sixth Circuit, as I did in the 13th. They work hard to get there. They work hard to do a good job. And so I held them in high regard. I'd get nervous talking to them. Now I feel like I'm one of the guys, and I go to events, and sometimes I see with young attorneys or law students, I can tell they're a little nervous talking to me. So that's kind of funny, because now I realize I am one of the guys, but I'm serving in the role of the judge. And so
Yes.
even in a court hearing, I'm not sitting there thinking I'm the smartest person in the room, or this is my way or the highway. It's more like, as the judge, what is my role, and how do I need to keep control of the courtroom and maintain the decorum of the courtroom and keep the process flowing? So I feel it feels like where I'm supposed to be. Whereas I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to be a judge. So that's been a cool experience. In terms of, do I love it? I really do. I'm doing family right now. And as you know, there's other places that a circuit judge can serve. We could do probate, civil, over 50,000, or criminal felony. And so the way in which a judge serves is different based on the area of law. So in criminal, for example, or civil, a judge is doing all of the pretrial hearings and decisions, but then ultimately it leads to a jury trial, and it is a jury that's the fact finder that decides the issues. Most cases don't go to trial. Most cases settle before that. But if decisions on the evidence need to be made, a jury makes those decisions. So the judge is more of the gatekeeper. What evidence does the jury hear? Overseeing jury selection, handling the procedural aspects of the case. Family law is a whole different animal because the judge is managing the procedure. We have many wonderful family law attorneys who are really trying to help families go from point A to point B to get through a very stressful emotional time, come out of it as strong as possible for their future, for their family, financially, all of that. And so it can feel very cooperative, collaborative. And what's the best way to help this family, even if there are real problems, substance abuse or abuse of some kind? And so unlike criminal law, where the constitutional procedural requirements are so necessary and they have to be done in a certain way, with family, if the parties and the attorneys agree, we can be more creative about the flow of the case, the process, what's done when. And so that's very creative, and I really enjoy that, like helping the attorneys problem solve, all of us giving our input into the best way to manage an individual case. Every case is so unique in family. And then if there needs to be an evidentiary hearing or a trial, I put on my judge hat and I'm now the fact finder. So that's really unique, which also means, I'm going to be the one blamed or responsible for the outcome, where it's the jury in a criminal or civil trial, but I just have to call it like I see it. I'm used to dealing with large amounts of evidence and determining what those things mean. And as a prosecutor, using words to articulate why I believe the data or the evidence shows what it shows. And so the end result as a judge, as a fact finder, is it results in my written findings explaining, here's the evidence that was presented. This is why I found this witness credible or not credible. This is how I connected the dots and why. And then here are my rulings. So it's very, I think it's complex. It's really interesting. You're constantly putting on and taking off different hats. And so I've really, really enjoyed serving in that way. And then also, I really care. I mean, I know that my rulings have a huge effect on people's lives. I recognize that. They may not always like my rulings, but I'm always approaching it with an understanding of how impactful my ruling is. And so to them, an issue may, not to them, for me, an issue on the scale of things I see, it may be a smaller issue. But for them, it's the only case in their life. It's the most stressful thing in their life. And so I try to give every case the attention I believe it deserves, and which is a lot. So I still care after 5.5 years of a lot of cases and a lot of hearings. And if I ever don't feel that way, then it's time to look in the mirror and figure something out.
Yeah, I think it would be being a judge, I think to begin with would be a very difficult job for a lot of the reasons you've described, but particularly in family law where emotions tend to run very high. And of course, you're tasked with making findings and ruling a certain way, and with the understanding that somebody's going to walk away dissatisfied. It's just the way it is. And at least for me, I think that will certainly add to the pressure. I don't know it's a job that I could ever do. For a lot of those reasons. So certainly my hat goes off to you for having done it for as long as and as well as you have.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot to me. And I will say, we're all born with different skill sets and different just ways of being. And I'm very proud of my ability and desire to do that. Like, I recognize, no, I don't know that everyone would enjoy doing it, but I want judges who are willing to make hard calls when the facts call for it, who will not succumb to any kind of pressure or influence. And I know sometimes before I rule, I know who's going to be upset. And we need judges who are willing to do that. And so, we get, as judges, we're a little bit isolated. I mean, it's very collegial. There's a lot of legal associations I belong to and go to, and I have my colleagues and my friends. And so you're not alone, but you do work kind of in a silo, and it's not like you get feedback all the time. So when this opportunity for reelection came up and it's required me to campaign, to have the legal community come out of the woodwork to support me, and even some attorneys I don't have I've never interacted with outside of court, for them to send in testimonials and donate and support me and say that they've really enjoyed appearing before me and this is why, it's meant the world to me. And campaigning's a lot of work, but this experience has been invaluable. And so I really appreciate it, more so than even if I had run unopposed.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're a damn good judge and you're a wonderful human being. And I think that's why you get the support that you do. No doubt about that.
Well, you're making me blush.
When is the election?
The election is August 18th, Tuesday, August 18th. The early voting starts August 8th and it goes through August 16th.
Okay.
Anyone can vote, whether they're registered with a party or they're non-party affiliated or they're a registered independent. Everyone can have a ballot if you're a registered voter. The time to request a mail-in ballot has passed and the time to register to vote has passed. But if you're already on the voter rolls, you can physically go vote in person. And I think some people who aren't party affiliated think that that's not the case, that they can't vote. But things like school board, judges, weird, unusual issues are on the August ballot. They're on the primary ballot. And then the general election obviously is in November. So for judge races, if there's 3 or more people, then the primary creates a runoff that runs to November, unless one of the multiple candidates got 50% plus a vote. And so I say that because it's a low turnout election. So in addition to getting my name out there and reminding people to vote for me, I'm encouraging and reminding people it's important to vote. It's a very low turnout vote.
In closing, is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know about you?
Well, I'm a mom, and I have 2 kids. They're 22 and 24, and I went through the divorce process. When I was a prosecutor working many hours, I was fortunate. My parents were snowbirds, and they spent time in Florida, and they helped me. And so my kids have turned out wonderfully, and they're strong, independent, very independent, productive members of society. And times were sometimes difficult. So I just want people to know that even if you are going through a divorce or conflict, or you have a stressful situation of work, try to stay grounded and be there for your kids, because they will come out of it strong. And I tell people, families that in court, like, your kids really are going to be okay. I think often the stress that drives the fear that creates all the emotion in family court, they're just worried about their kids. And often it's 2 good people who have different views of what's in the child's best interest. And then they have a history, they have resentments, and it ends up fueling litigation, where if they could just step aside, focus on themselves for a little while, that would all calm down. And so I try and get people through that process quickly. I recognize what a difficult place family law is for people. I'm grateful for the wonderful attorneys who do that, because I see that they often have families' best interests at heart. And so I just am giving a shout out to people to hang in there if they're going through it.
Liz, I cannot thank you enough for joining us here today. I'm so glad that our viewers got to learn more about you and your very obvious qualifications. Best of luck in this upcoming election. And of course, you have got my unyielding support.
And I wanted to say, in closing, that I wanted to make mention of the fact that before you became judge, I had a lot of opportunity to see you as a prosecutor when dealing with cases that where I was on the other side as a defense attorney. And you are definitely on top of the list as far as fairness that I witnessed, your professionalism, demeanor. You're definitely, in my memory, on the top of that list. So I wanted the viewers to know that I can speak from experience in having dealt with you, that sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it gets ugly when you're litigating because, you know, the prosecutor is holding their position as how they see the case. You're seeing your position, and sometimes it doesn't, it's not the most pleasant. But with you, it always was pleasant. With you, it was always fair. With you, it was always your temperament is, you're just those are the values or the traits that make for a good judge.
I agree.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think sometimes people, they want more information about our judge candidates. And so to have a platform to share about ourselves can be really helpful, I think. So thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Heidi. And I appreciate your kind words.
Have a great rest of your weekend, Liz.
You too. Thanks, Donnie.
Thank you.